welcome back to Design for Impact. Today we're going to talk about finding intervention points and generating ideas. It'll be mostly an interactive session, so there's not a lot of slides that I need to talk through. Yeah, and it'll be based on what we spoke about last week in terms of visualizing a system of learning a new skill. So kind of keeping things nice and simple, not trying to change the world overnight. But yeah, just learning the skills that we can then apply. All right, so just to recap from last week. So last week we spoke about the Cynefin model, which Kyle has been watching lots of stuff on, and basically talks about different types of systems. I think the one that we're most interested in is complex systems, because that's where the world's big problems are. And basically, in complex systems, we said cause and effect relationships aren't always repeatable, and they're not kind of in the same space and time. And what you need to do there is actually probe, sense, and respond. So you need to kind of try to understand what's happening, and then use experiments to basically make change happen. And then the other thing that we spoke about is stocks and flows. So that's how we mapped learning a new skill. And that was, I thought, the maps that we came up with were pretty good in terms of talking to what it is, what's involved in learning a new skill, and helping us understand that. First thing is talking about how might we questions. And really, we're going to focus on goals and constraints with those, just as an easy way of kind of thinking of how might we questions. The second thing we're going to talk about is identifying intervention points in a system. And then the third thing we're going to do is generate ideas based on what we've found and what we've understood. So goals are pretty important, right? Because they help us focus. And so sometimes people find goals scary, right? Because if you have a goal, then you'll know if you didn't achieve it. And that can be a bit daunting. But I've been listening a lot to things around the importance of setting goals. And really, if you don't define your goal, you've already failed, right? You haven't achieved the thing that you actually want to achieve, even though you haven't defined it. So defining your goal is pretty important. So some goals could be like getting a job promotion, building our dream home, improving health outcomes for young families. It could be learning a new skill, right? Those could be goals. Obviously, there's, tons of frameworks and stuff like SMART goals and all this, but we won't go through those today. We'll just keep it high level. The second thing that we want to talk about is identifying your constraints, right? And they're really important when we talk about like design challenges and when we talk about making impact, right? Because there's often a reason or, specific constraints that we need to kind of follow or abide by or work around. So for example, if I want to get a job promotion, maybe at the same time, I don't want to work any extra hours, right? So I want to do it within my work hours. Or if I want to build a dream home, that's great, but I don't have an infinite amount of money in my bank account, so I need to do it within our budget. And same thing for improving health outcomes. It might be kind of a place where you can't get a lot of internet, so it needs to be done offline. In their day-to-day work, but somehow they can do the job really efficiently, right? Even though they don't have the right equipment and everything for it. All right, so how might we questions, right? The simplest way to think about them is just like bringing a goal and a constraint together, right? So if we kind of use the examples before, we could say, how might we get a job promotion without working extra hours? How might we build our dream home within our budget? How might we improve health outcomes for young families using offline methods? Yeah, the simplest way, you don't want to kind of overcook it, right? But at the same time, you kind of just want to combine like what's the goal that you really want to achieve and what's the biggest constraint that you're facing. And a cool way to kind of think about how might we questions is that you want them wide enough to spark ideas, right? So you don't want to say, how can I get, $70,000 while working 38 hours? So you want them a bit wider than that, but at the same time, you want them narrow enough to define your boundaries, right? You don't want to just say, how might I get a job promotion without identifying any of your constraints, right? Because, well, you can do lots of things to get a job promotion. So yeah, wide enough to spark ideas, but narrow enough to define boundaries. So here's the first activity. So I'll split you into groups again. What we might do is I'll split you into two groups. And it's okay if you're not using the same map. That's fine. You can just learn someone else's map. So I want you to focus on what are you trying to achieve? Like what's the goal that you want to achieve? What's one constraint that you have in learning a new skill? And then formulate a how might we question based on your goal and constraint. So how was that exercise?
At the end of the exercise, the only thing that I did was that apart from the goal and the constraint that we were aiming for, I also added the persona, which is for whom am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
So that actually I just uh, just to kind of create a value statement, sort of, that
Yeah.
I'm not doing this just because I want a promotion, but I'm doing this because I also want to engage my customer with something.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore I also put the third element of a user or a persona, if you may,
Mm.
into my HMV. And I thought that created the importance of learning a new skill for me.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Which is what your group was talking about in terms of like, what's the purpose behind this, like learning a new skill or getting a promotion or.
Yeah, I mean, if I believe that if you're approaching a client, then and if you say that I'm doing this because I want a promotion, then what value are you going to get from doing whatever that you're doing? Because promotions typically are about the value that you have created for the company over a period of time.
Yeah.
And so what you're basically saying through your HMV statement is that by learning this skill, I'm going to engage this particular customer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
then also what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn it in a certain period.
Yeah.
So then that creates, I think, a very solid statement.
Awesome. Good idea, Bishan. What about the other group? Do you have any reflections on how you went?
So a little less around this specific exercise, a little more holistic.
Mm.
Being part of this original map, it was a little bit difficult for me to pull out the how might we, since we didn't, not knowing that this was the next step we were taking, and we were building this map for the sake of building how might we statements after the
Mm-hmm.
fact. It was a little bit difficult to pull that out. I think
Yeah.
we would have made some different strategic decisions building the map if we knew that this was the next stage.
Yeah, cool. That's a good reflection, and that's why it's kind of like we keep saying, it's important to not just like try to make it perfect, right? Because like if you need to find intervention points, which is the next thing, this map might be really helpful. But if you need to create how might we questions, maybe you need to use another technique. Awesome. So do groups does someone from each group want to share their how might we question, just so the other group is aware?
I don't know if our group aligned on one single one. Does somebody want to be the spokesperson and choose the one?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, not it.
I thought the one that Kristen came up with first was pretty on the money.
What was that one, Tom?
Where is it here? Now I've lost it. So we started off with how to get a promotion within limited time, but then we narrowed that down to how do we learn an appropriate skill to get a promotion within a limited amount of time. Yeah. So that kind of made the goal, put a little bit more information in the goal to constrain it a little bit more. And then within the limited amount of time, we refrain from putting a number on it because that might constrain it too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Because that kind of like, yeah, like it. Yeah, I like the flavor that you gave it in terms of like adding that specific like what did you say again? What did you say?
It's an art rather than a science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Kyle or Yusuf or someone from the other team, do you want to share what your how might we was?
We also have many, so I don't know.
Okay, cool.
I think also with the introductions and stuff, maybe I missed the part where we were supposed to
Choose one. That's okay.
choose one.
That's all right.
It did. I was gonna say it was interesting. I felt like any of the nodes around this map could be. You could just how might we do more or less of it? No, it's trying to be more complex than that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, and that's kind of the thing about finding intervention points as well, and mapping the system in this specific way. All right, cool. So what we might do then is that will probably be the first thing that you do when you go back into. This is the map that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago in terms of like how might you create or create better patient outcomes. And you can you can say like one intervention point is you create more data, right? The interesting thing about that is that you can get closer to or further away from the goal that you want to achieve by kind of tracing back or tracing forward, right? So more data is pretty disconnected from better patient outcomes, but it's still an intervention point. Whereas better insights, is much closer to better patient outcomes, right? And it's also an intervention point. And it's not that you want to, like, I think most people when they start kind of designing, changing complex systems, they really want to kind of like narrow the scope as quickly as possible, right? It's like, I would say it's pretty annoying, right? But actually pretty helpful to kind of like keep these things in mind, right? You don't want to commit to one idea. You don't want to, not until the end, not until you've tested it, right? You don't want to just commit to one intervention point. You do want to commit to one goal, right? Because that's like a helpful constraint. But kind of committing to one intervention point isn't actually that helpful. And you want to explore multiple intervention points at the same time. So for example, if we want to get better patient outcomes, in my example, then I might identify 3 intervention points. One is investment around getting better insights, right? So that requires like a monetary or resource investment. One might be around data collection, right? So just collecting more data. And then one might be around getting better insights, right? And it might be, so for example, you might not collect more data. You might just get better insights from the current data that you have, or you might, instead of collecting data, you just gather it from other partners or other organizations and try to get better insights from that. Does that make sense around finding intervention points?
Can I ask a question that maybe is a little further in the future?
Yeah, of course.
So as we're looking at these intervention points, like your examples here, if we were going to do some hypotheses around them and then do like prototyping or testing or do like pilot some work there, how do you kind of separate these success metrics or failure if you're looking at multiple intervention points, right? And you're running an experiment? How do you, in the end, determine which intervention point or which hypothesis or which changes are leading you to the best possible outcome? Or is this like a whole package deal?
Yeah, cool. I think so. I definitely don't think it's a whole package deal. Like, I don't think, like, just because you're testing multiple interventions, it doesn't mean that you know, the service or product that you roll out has or addresses all those intervention points. At the same time, the success metrics and the experiments, they don't need to combine all the intervention points. So you could have one experiment that's just focused on collecting more data, right? And another experiment that's just focused on investment in getting insights, right? Or you might choose to do an experiment that's, you know what, it makes sense to kind of combine these 2 intervention points into one experiment and run the experiment, right? And then it becomes like a question of, okay, and this matters in terms of how you measure it, and we'll talk a bit about that next week in terms of like hypothesis and theory of change. But it depends, like you don't want to just like wait until the end of the experiment before you measure it. You kind of want to be able to change the experiment on the fly as you're measuring things. And again, it comes back to the idea of you don't want to commit too early, and you don't want to commit long term, right? You want to kind of keep learning and keep changing things to get better outcomes. Does that answer your question, Kristen?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So what we're going to do next is find intervention points, and I want you to just use a symbol to visualize where you might intervene in your map, right? But before that, you really need to kind of, as a team, agree on the how might we question. So agree on the how might we question, and then identify intervention points. And then the next thing we'll talk about is generating ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. I'll take you back. Awesome. Welcome back. How was that?
Much easier than the last task.
Why is that?
Just once you had a how might we could just look at the nodes and the connections and say, where does it apply and where doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So it kind of gives you a focus, right? That's the cool thing about the how might we is that it, like, gets you to focus. It doesn't like unnecessarily constrain you, but it's like a helpful constraint to like have a specific focus. Awesome. Anyone else want to share their reflections?
I think the difficult part was we were tempted to expand on the map a little bit, add more nodes based on the how might we, because we've thought of more intersection points.
I would give into that temptation.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's not like your map is your map. You make of it what's going to be most helpful. So it's not about, my dog sees someone outside. I'm glad we can entertain you, Yusuf. Max, no. Max, come here. So it's not about committing to something that, and then, we finished that stage. We finished the mapping stage. We can't do anything anymore. That's why it's like an iterative process, which, for some people it's annoying, but it's also pretty cool that you can kind of keep revisiting things as you learn more about a topic or a concept. All right. Cool. Any other reflections?
I thought we had the same issue. We added more to the map because it seemed like there were parts missing that should be there, like intervention points, right, that weren't mapped. And that it would have been nice to spend a little more time thinking through that.
All right.
Because there probably are more, right?
Does everyone want a bit more time? We can push generating ideas to the next session. I
wasn't saying we need more time because this isn't real. Like if it was reality, we might spend more time there, but
fair enough. Okay. Is everyone happy with moving on then? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So I want someone from each team to tell me what the intervention points that you identified were before we go to generating ideas. Yusuf, I won't pick on you.
I think for ours, we realized that the two main intervention points were kind of time and then resources, both physical and learning resources. But we also identified a couple of other intervention points as well. But we kind of felt like the time and the resources were sort of the main ones.
Awesome. Sounds good. What about the other team?
I would just chime in and say the how might we that we chose, though, is how might we learn more about a skill with limited resources. So that kind of, it really focuses us in on where the intervention points are.
Yeah. Yeah, I would actually challenge it, right? Because like Yeah, I would challenge that. Have a think when you go back to generating ideas, spend a bit of time saying, okay, how could we, given like time and resources are constraints, how could we, how could we change that? So I think the other group was talking about like, I think it was Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong. Dawn was talking about how like, if you have a support network, right, then you can, that can be helpful, right? And I said it might be helpful because it can give you work-life balance. Like you might be able to delegate some things, right, like taking care of the kids or cooking or something, and kind of create more time. So have a think about like other things, and yeah, have a think about other things that might help you to do that. Cool. I want to talk to you a little bit about generating ideas because a lot of people kind of don't do it very well. So there's a few kind of techniques to generating ideas. The first one is you want to start out doing them individually, because that kind of gives you the space to think for yourself and kind of use your own experience and what you know and everything that you've learned. Use that to actually generate ideas. So it doesn't kind of avoids groupthink at least for the moment. The other thing that you want to do is then you want to share with the group, right? And you want to share with the group, and you don't want like, now is not the time to criticize ideas, right? Now is the time to build. So you want to kind of, if you don't think an idea will work, you say, yes, that could work if we do that, right? Or I think so. It's kind of like the yes and mentality. And you want to, ideas are kind of like pretty rough, right? You want to treat them like they're pretty rough. You don't want to kind of, define exactly how the idea will work now. Again, that will come later. You want to be able to combine them. It's a bit like baking. You want to be able to kind of combine different ideas. You want to be able to shape them. You want to be able to change them. It's okay to do that. Don't throw any ideas out. It's fine to have ideas and say, these ideas, we don't think they'll work, but they're on the side anyway. Don't feel the need to kind of throw ideas out. And the last thing is when you're generating ideas, there's this graph that maybe I'll post in Slack. It basically, you start off like thinking about like all the things that are common, right? All the ideas that other people will have as well. And then you kind of hit like a block, right? And when you pass through that block, that's when you get kind of more creative ideas, things that haven't been tried before. So when you hit the block, just keep generating ideas. It might take you 10 ideas, it might take you 20 ideas. So don't feel constrained by the number of ideas. Just wait for the block and then keep going. And often you'll be able to kind of like remix different ideas to come up with more. Cool. Any questions? So we're going to go for 15 minutes. We want to do probably 5 minutes individually. Hopefully you get to that block, and then 10 minutes to share and kind of build upon as a group. Any reflections before we end today's session? We will do one small step and feedback. But yeah, any quick reflections on how idea generation went?
Well, I think the divergence process is always very, very stressful, and I think you generate too many ideas, and then there's always this thing at the back of your mind that probably you start judging your ideas even before you've presented it.
Yeah.
So I think I think everybody goes through it, and I go through it every time I do this exercise. The divergence part is very, very difficult because we are converging even before we have diverged completely. That's what I felt.
Yeah, you're converging before you put it on paper. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a constant kind of struggle to just share your ideas openly. It is difficult, and not for everyone. I think some people find it easier than others. But
I think there's this fear of being judged, and that fear keeps you from opening yourself up to, there's no such thing as a ridiculous idea is something that I think we all must remember, because even ridiculous ideas have come to fruition over a period of time.
Yeah.
I think some of what we are doing today were once upon a time ridiculous ideas. But then, there's always this fear inside of us that, probably this idea is not going to work even before we have presented it. That happened with me even today.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla is a good example, or SpaceX, or even this. Like when I was thinking of doing this, I was like, is anyone going to be really that interested? So yeah, completely agree. Awesome. Any other reflections?
I had a question actually. So, is this kind of like what it's like in industry? Is like people do this on a whiteboard for an hour with their team? Is that what actually happens?
It's a good question because like I remember when I was at uni as well, and I was like surely not. Come on, like, do people not consider that like a waste of time? So I would say it's based on the organization. So like some organizations, it'll be like, the head of the department, they'll be like, we need to implement this thing. And then everyone goes off and implements it. But I think more and more organizations, especially like the forward thinking organizations, are kind of using these, like even government, like, I facilitate sessions at government where we spend the whole day doing something like this. Kyle, what were you going to say? I saw you nodding.
Yeah, I was going to kind of that same exact point though. Like I've been trying to run these remotely just because of the current environment. And I'm doing them either on Mural or just Jamboard because that's what we've got for the full enterprise. And trying to do it with a small group on Zoom is nothing like having everybody in the room fighting over the whiteboard. Like, there's so much more conversation. And then like you get two people that step aside and they're having a bit of debate, and then somebody ducks out because they don't want to be part of it anymore. And you got four conversations all happening at the same time. Like there's just so much more kinetic activity that happens live that I'm really missing these days more than anything. So like moment, but there's nothing that I found that has replaced that on-site workshop.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Where did everyone get to? Did everyone get to share their ideas back?
Yeah, we did it amongst ourselves.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, what we're going to do next week is really kind of shape those ideas a bit more. Awesome. I'll share my screen for the last 2 minutes. So we're going to do one small step. So one small step for new people, Yusuf and George. What we do every week is we kind of commit to one small action that we're going to do.
Yeah, mine last week was to dig in deeper to the Kinefin framework. And I was mentioning earlier, I'm lost at it now. It's a rabbit hole. It's pretty exciting to. So I've got a lot more to do. There's a few books I'm finding now. I'm finding more and more websites and lectures, and I'm stuck now.
That's awesome. Feel free to share some of the videos that you watched, Kyle. I noticed that Bishan this week wants to watch some videos on Cynefin.
Yeah, I think there's one video by, well, I think most people in the industry would consider him to be the father of systems thinking. His name is Russ Akoff. And there's a TED talk that was done, I think 30 years ago, maybe in the 90s, and he's speaking about systems thinking. I was thinking about posting that on Slack, and I would probably do it this week. So I want everybody to do that, because he just he explains systems thinking from a very layman perspective, if I may put it.
Yeah, that would be awesome if you can post that. Feel free.
Sure.
I'm enjoying all the posts that we're adding.
Yeah. Thanks, Abraham.
Cool. So Hannah's going to do some work on your portfolio. Tom's going to put a proposal to improve accessibility. Kyle will focus on anthrocomplexity. Please share back what you find.
Will do.
Cool. Awesome. So the last thing is just take a minute to do the feedback. So it's the next one down the, okay, you've already started. Yeah, just so what did you learn? What worked well? What do we need to do better? And what do you want to do cover next? I'm like, I recognize that we've identified a few things now that we want to cover next. I'm kind of just putting them and trying to put them in order and develop the content for them. But yeah, I definitely read through it. And the other thing, I think, if like, we want to be as engaging as possible. So if you have any kind of ideas for me, how to improve, how to do that, yeah, please share as well. Yusuf, once you finish your masterclass on magic, you're gonna have to share. Gonna have to do like a little demo.
I already know a couple tricks, but
can you do it over Zoom?
What?
Can you do it over Zoom?
Oh, I could do a card trick, but it wouldn't work the same.
Well, how about this? Maybe prepare something for next week, and then come ready to. You can use your magic trick to open up the session.
Oh, okay. I'll wait. I'll save it.
I'll do it now as a way to close. We can do that too.
I'll have some time to practice.
All right. Feel free to share what it is you're exploring. I could learn something.
Sure.
All right. Thanks so much, team. Thanks for coming. Yeah, hope you enjoyed today's session and hope we can see you next week.